All right. Have a note that you might walk by. All right. This is Sports for Real with Coach Hall. I hope you didn't catch that, but I was singing that Fantasia song or going through some of the lyrics. I think that commercial with Anthony Edwards and the other guy singing that song is kind of corny, and that's probably the only reason why I'm thinking about it myself. But don't have a whole lot of time today, so let's just jump right into it. For the second time, the top four seeds in the NCAA tournament will be making it to the Final Four. The first time, Kansas, I don't remember the other three. Kansas and Memphis, they played for the championship that year. I don't remember the other two. But Kansas was the number one overall seed. This year, Auburn was the number one overall seed. There was no controversy back then when Kansas got it. But this year, Auburn, they kind of like back into the tournament, and they still got that number one overall seed. I think with them, it made a difference because had they gone a different route, a little tougher route, they may not have got through that first round. But once they got their legs together, they've been playing a lot better basketball. So here we go. All that's over with. It's now who wants to be a champion. And the team that I think that backed into the Final Four, if anybody did, is Florida. They were down 9 points with about 3 minutes left and rallied to win that game. They had to rally to get by UConn. Well, when you get to a championship situation, you're either going to continue with these upsets or you're going to get blown out. So the question is, which Florida team is going to show up in the Final Four? I think Florida's had their run. I don't think they're going to get past any farther than where they are. But myself, I came into these final two rounds at 39-9. So I actually did pretty good with the tournament, and I picked all 8 of the third and fourth round games. So I'm sitting here at 47-9, looking pretty good. Actually, not 47-9. I won all 12 games. So I'm actually 51-9. There's only 3 games left. So it sounds good. I've done this well before under much more difficult circumstances. Not that the tournament is easier now, but the fact that you have these top teams, there's no real threats for the mid-majors really anymore, because if you get a guy that plays 1 or 2 years and he's a star at a small level school with NIL, one of these big programs are going to come calling and poach him. So instead of having a mid-major team that's been together for 4 or 5 years and become a real threat, that's not there anymore. So these top 4 seeds getting to the tournament may just become a common sight. Hopefully that's not the case, because what's make this tournament real good is the fact that you get upsets. So eventually NCAA is going to revert to the program that I've been calling for years. If you have true teams, true bubble teams, and they get into the tournament, stop seeding them 11, 12, 10, and putting them where they belong, on the 16, 15 line. And once you start putting teams like a North Carolina, who was on the bubble, the last team to get in, then North Carolina should have been a 15 and 16. Then they become a major threat to these number one seeds, because you can't just stroll through the first round, first game and a half before you really have to start playing. That's going to make a big difference. So keep an eye on that moving forward. JC, how we doing, man? Chris Bristol, how you doing? Hadn't seen you in a while. Got this NCAA tournament going, man. There's some great basketball going on, but everybody had Florida cutting down the nets. They're really going crazy now that they got to the Final Four. But I think Florida's kind of looking like Auburn did going into the SEC tournament. It's a complete reversal. So with Florida taking on Auburn, that's kind of a matchup that we didn't see in the SEC tournament. I don't think Florida's playing as good as Auburn right now, even though Florida has a lot of heart. You should coach big teams, yo. No, it would be nice if I can coach big teams, but I can't even get a high school team. The one team that I applied for this year, I got shot down. So I'm what you call a one-liner. I can have the greatest resume in the world, but it's always somebody who does one thing better than me, and they're going to take that person over me. Then you go out and watch these people perform or the teams they put together, and you say, I could have did much better than that. But I'm not the one making those decisions. But I'm not applying for no more coaching jobs, and I'm done with it. Willie Perch, USC. Is that South Carolina? Or are you talking about the Trojans, man? I like the Trojans. South Carolina, not so much. But I also mentioned the fact that you have college football is in the news. I keep telling you all the time, basketball is just something to do until football comes around. And even at its height, you always got to throw some football talk in there. And the football talk I'm coming with today, I saw a situation going on in the NCAA where Dion put out a call for college teams to be able to do like what they do in the pros, where they play fall games, kind of like the model where you have in NFL during the preseason. All the fans see are the preseason games, but they don't know that those teams been practicing against each other all week. And Dion is calling for a similar model in the NCAA. And when he put that out there, Syracuse jumped on that, and they say they'd be willing to go to Boulder and practice with the Buffaloes, and that would be a novel concept for them. And it would give both teams a chance to see where they really are instead of just continually practice against each other all the time. But of course, the NCAA, they shot that down. They say we're not going to do any spring games and we're not going to do any preseason games, and that's just the way it is. So the NCAA, being that things are changing at a rapid pace and things are becoming more modernized in the NCAA, they still trying to hold on to old ways of doing things. And I think it would be great if you could have these colleges scrimmage against each other. I've always felt that way. I didn't have to see an article in the paper to see something like that. Because when I was in college, I kind of felt the same way. Coach say, well, we're going to have this great scrimmage and we're going to evaluate everybody to see who's going to get on the field. But it's the same dudes. You already know who you're playing against. I know how I can beat this guy and I know what I can't do against this guy. So I just got to make sure I don't get into situations where I get beat a whole lot. And if I'm looking halfway decent or at least a stalemate, then I'm good. If you played against another team, now you get a true picture of where you really stand. This is why sometimes it takes college teams 2 or 3 weeks before they get the legs under themselves, before they really start rolling. Now, if you're truly a great team, I don't think it matters. But most teams, it takes them a while before they get going. And in the past, that's why it took teams a lot of times to start getting into conference games, 3-4 games in a season. Makes a big difference. Jay Steele, the real, you still play the piano, or whatever that means. I play a lot of stuff, but it won't be the piano. But I think it would be a good idea if college teams could play in spring and preseason games. They are the only level of football that does not do that. Even in Pop Warner around here, they play these little practice games. And we were in high school. We played what they call jamborees. At that time, you played 2 quarters, one against this team and one against another team. Then later on, they expanded that to where you play a half. Now they playing whole games against one opponent. So you still get a chance to see how you look against another team. And they do it in the pros, they do it in high school, but not the NCAA. But looks like to me that the NCAA, it won't be long before they become completely irrelevant. As you know, they don't have anything to do with the college football playoff now. And their powers seem to be diminishing. And the more that NIL becomes a free fall, then you can expect the NCAA to continue falling off the wayside. And what's eventually going to happen, they're going to go away completely. And I don't know if that's a good thing, but if you're going to run things like it's 1958, then how can it be a positive thing is what I want to know. But the story of the day, though, is these Final Four teams. Who's the true number one? And like I say, I'm sitting on a 51-9 mark for this tournament. And I think I got a pretty good idea about what's going to happen. I told you guys before that Duke, to me, has been the best team. We're talking weeks before the tournaments began. And I'm not backing off that. That guy Flag is healthy and he's playing ball. Duke's going to be a hard out. You're going to have to play above and beyond if you want to get by them. Now, Houston, on the other hand, I told you guys the other day, they've been in the Final Four so many times. And every time they got there, something always happened to them. You go all the way back to 83 when they got beat by North Carolina State. You know, that's a team of destiny where every single thing that had to happen for them went for them. And that's how they ended up winning that championship. Even a couple of bad calls that made a difference come down to the end. And despite all of that, they threw up this Hail Mary shot when they were pretty much 5 seconds on the clock. The dude just happened to be there. Lorenzo Charles jump up and jam it in, and it looked like they practiced that for 1,000 times. But it just so happened, he just happened to be there when they threw the ball up, and he dunked it in with no time on the clock. Now, that is the cruelest way to lose a championship. And Houston, they've seen it happen to them a lot of times. They come back the next year, five slammer jammer with Georgetown, but Georgetown was one of those teams that was just, you weren't going to beat Georgetown that year. And Houston just couldn't stand up. Disappeared for a long time. They came back. They went to the Final Four a couple of years ago, but Baylor was just the heads and shoulders, just like Georgetown was then. Now, I'm starting to get the feel that this could be Houston's time. So, a Houston-Duke matchup, to me, and I'm saying it right now, that's going to be for the national championship. Auburn, they stand a good chance to get by Florida, from my opinion. But Duke and Houston, that's the championship game. And a lot of times when you get to these Final Fours, they already have prearranged matchups. They don't redo the seedings when you get to the Final Fours. And I think that's a good thing. But the downside of that, a lot of times you end up with the best game being in the semifinals. But the way Houston is playing, they beat you up down low. They took apart a Tennessee team that played defense as well, but they didn't play very well yesterday. And Houston sprinted away from them. And that was a surprise to me because I know Tennessee plays great defense. If you look at the score, that's the kind of range that Tennessee needed to be in to win the game. But Houston played such great defense against them that they couldn't get off. So that is not a good sign. If they show up with that same defensive effort, they're going to slow Duke down. And it's going to come down to the last minute or two, and we're going to have a great finish in that one. But I think the best two teams out of these top seeds is clearly Houston and Duke. And I think Houston, with all the thing they've been through, if they get by Duke, they cut the nets down. And Duke, I don't see nobody else beating them if they get by this game here. So I'm telling you right now, the championship game is in the semifinal rounds between Houston and Duke. Mark my word on that. JC says I'm picking Duke to win championship over Auburn. Don't know how serious Broom elbow injury is. Look, man, when it's time to play for a championship, they'll find a way to get him on the court. If they have to shoot him up and do that old-fashioned stuff and worry about it, when the game's over with. But it's not like he has to go out and run on that elbow, and it's not the same effect as running on the elbow. So I think you shoot it up or numb it or whatever you got to do. They're going to have him on that floor ready to play, man, for a championship. You're probably never going to get to this position again, especially a guy like Broom who's going to make a lot of money in the NBA. And I just think they're going to find a way to get him on the court. So don't even worry about that elbow injury. You won't be thinking about it once the ball goes up in the air, and we're going to have a great matchup. But like I said, Duke and Houston, keep an eye on that game. If I'm not mistaken, that Duke is playing Houston. I think I got it right. But in any case, if they meet for the championship, that would be the best game. So keep an eye out on Houston. It just might be their time. But Duke, to me, is still a better team. But that's all I'm chewing on today. Like I say, we talked about the top four seeds. Florida, it kind of like did the reverse of what Auburn did at the end of the season. They backed into the SEC championship on a 2-game losing streak. Then they end up losing again in the tournament. So they lost 3 or 4 going into the NCAA tournament. Got their legs together. Now they're playing Auburn basketball again. Florida was very, very fortunate to get by 2 of those opponents on the way to the Final Four. And I think if they think they're going to keep coming back like that, ain't no more NC States out there. And they fall behind against Auburn. Won't be any catching up like that. And I just think that Florida, it just might be at the end of the rope. Can they still win it? Sure, they can win it. They're number 1 seed just like the other 3. But I just don't think so. And Deion Sanders, I think he had something. He's on to something when he's talking about the preseason and spring games in college. It's long overdue. And anybody ever played college football or any football, you always look forward to playing against an opponent, no matter what kind of game it is, whether it's preseason or real, and to keep banging on each other all the time kind of gets old. And for a guy like myself, I hated spring practice as a player. Now, as a coach, you need spring practice, or you used to need spring practice. College, you still need it, but high school, I don't know how relevant spring practice is anymore, because what you normally have here, especially in Florida, shape up a team. And it's happened to me before. I shaped up a team. I got this offense set up, and we're going to score X amount of points based on what we have. All we got to do is stay healthy. And then things started to happen. The guy you thought was going to be your quarterback, he transfers and goes somewhere else. Or your running back breaks a leg, or something happens. You can't depend on it. But today, with the players moving around the way they do, the team that you have in the spring is not the same team you're going to have in the fall. So what is the point of going through all of that if you're not going to even have half the team that you had in the spring? It kind of defeats the purpose, if you ask me. You'd be better off just continuing on with your spring formula of working out and getting in the weight room. You'd probably do better off doing that, because most of the players you have, they're not coming back. And how can you build a program or build a team if you don't even know what you're going to have? And I can see it with the transfer portal in college. At least you know who you're getting. Once they sign, they're coming in, and then you go from there. But they're not going to come in and then turn around and leave immediately. 1 or 2 players might do that, and that's for certain circumstances. But for the most part, they're not. But in high school in Florida, you don't know what you're going to have. So what's the point of spring practice? I just don't see it. All right, before I get out of here, let me check this poll. 1917, great number. I said, should college teams play against each other in the spring and fall? Some of you guys you're 50-50 on the situation. I can understand that because it's never done before. But if you think about it, if you can get some of the kinks out, because in college football, you only have but so many games, and you only have but so many missteps. Now, I understand now with the playoffs and all, you have a chance to bounce back if you're lucky, if you're in one of those conferences that have a conference championship. But if you think about before they had these championship games, if you lost 1 game, you were likely out of it. And a lot of times, if you could have played some preseason games, you might have got those kinks out, and that might have made a difference between winning and losing. And that's what it really comes down to. But that now that the players have been getting paid, don't rule out the fact that someday that you'll have these spring and preseason games coming to college football. Be must-see television, more exposure for your program, and you get some extra work in against another opponent, so you can get a true idea about what you're going to have when you go into the fall. So that's just my thoughts. But in the meantime, I appreciate you guys chiming in with me. Have a great day wherever you are in the world. And if I don't have any breaking news, I'll see you guys in the morning. Until then, this has been Sports for Real. And I'm on the Duke train as always. And I think Houston got a lot to say about what's going to happen come Saturday. So we'll find out. So in the meantime, have a great day. I got to go to work, so I'm out.